understand why I get so nervous as if this is my first time doing this, because it is not. So, yeah. I just want to make sure. Whoops. I just want to make sure that this thing is still recording. I cannot figure out the perfect setup for me, but that's okay. Okay. Let me just check my work stuff before I need to be uninterrupted. Okay, that's good to go. And then that's the first. That's two clips like I need to remove. And then I need to know what it is. Okay. I feel like I'm ready. I don't know why I'm always nervous. Like, this is my first time doing this. Okay, ready and action. Hey guys, welcome back to the Subjective Podcast. I'm your host, Danielle, and today I have a lot on my mind, okay? I have been thinking about things as per usual, and I've been thinking about this episode for a while, but also I just needed to record it, so you guys are getting me raw, natural, in the middle of the workday, no makeup, so hope you don't mind. However, here's what's been on my mind. So I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like somewhere along the way, I just started confusing being constantly updated and consuming everything with actually being informed. And I don't think I even noticed when it happened. Like, I would wake up, check my phone, scroll through headlines, see what's trending, watch a few TikTok clips, read a few posts, and I swear by 9 a.m., I would feel like I had already consumed the entire news cycle. And I really thought that that was what being informed looked like. But if someone were to ask me to actually explain what was going on, what it means, what actually affects me, most of the time I couldn't. And I quickly learned that being informed is not about consuming everything. It's about having accurate, credible information about things that matter to me, enough to understand what's happening, what it means, and whether it actually affects me. And to be honest, I feel like most of us don't have an information problem or a lack of information problem. I think a lot of us have a problem with filtering information. And so today, I want to talk about how to stay informed without absolutely losing your mind. And I also want to talk about kind of the mindset shifts and the practical shifts that changed how I consume information and how I go about staying informed. But before we get into that, if you are watching on YouTube, please make sure you like, subscribe, share this video with a friend if you think it would be helpful. And if you're listening on any audio podcast platforms, make sure that you subscribe and again, share this episode. With that being said, oh, also follow me on socials at The Subjective Pod. I'm on TikTok, Instagram. I am also on Substack, and I have a personal Threads account that I'm going to start yapping on a little bit more. So follow me there. I'm going to link everything in the bio per usual. But I think that's enough. So let's get into the episode. Okay, so right now we live in a constant information environment. There is always something happening. There's always breaking news. There's always a new headline, and there's always someone telling you that something is urgent or it's major or this is unprecedented. And especially in this chaotic administration that we have, I swear, it feels like every day there is something new. Every day you literally have to brace yourself for what is to come. And if you care about what's happening in the world, it can really start to feel like everything is your responsibility to keep up with at all times. And at this point, I think that it feels like we're not just keeping up with the news. We're keeping up with reactions to the news and reactions to the reactions and discourse about whether we should even be reacting in the first place. And being overwhelmed starts to feel like almost like proof that we are actually paying attention. Like if you're constantly checking updates, constantly anxious, constantly plugged in, you must be informed, right? But I don't know, again, about anyone else because this clearly just be me. But do you know that feeling when you have been scrolling for 30 minutes and you're like, what the heck did I even just read? Like, you feel like there's something on going on, you feel like something's happening, but if someone were to ask you to actually explain it, you couldn't actually do that. And I just want to be clear that that is not being informed. That is literally information overload. And information overload creates this weird illusion of being aware, and you feel like you're doing your job, you're paying attention, you feel like you are doing your civic duty, but you don't actually have more clarity about anything. You don't have more context on anything. You don't even know what matters and what doesn't. You literally are just carrying a bunch of information around in your brain that isn't actually useful to your life. And I think it's important to remember that understanding is different. To understand means that you could explain what's happening to someone else. I always like to use the idea of, can I explain this to a third grader in a way that they would understand? It means that you know it's real, you know it's speculation, and you also know what is still developing or what is still uncertain. You have context and you're not just reacting to things, you're thinking, you're asking questions. And so the shift isn't about consuming more information, it really is about being intentional. And that to me starts with one simple decision, and that is literally figuring out what you're actually responsible for knowing. Now, I personally think that this was the biggest shift for me. I really had to accept that I am not responsible for knowing everything that is happening in the world. It is not possible, it's not sustainable. And if you try to be aware of everything, you will literally end up being aware of nothing. So instead of trying to keep up with everything, I started to think in three categories. So a must know category, a good to know category, and then a not my business category. And so for me, a must know category is anything that directly affects my rights, my safety, my finances, my community, or the people that I feel responsible for or care about. So for me, that means that in my must know category is things like policies that impact civil rights or healthcare or housing or labor, any type of local elections in North Carolina, any type of state decisions, any emergency events here in North Carolina, any type of economic changes that affect the cost of living, or anything that affects Black communities or other marginalized groups. And also anything that is happening in West Virginia where my family lives. I feel like those are the things that are my responsibility. And everything else, it might be important, but it's just not that urgent for me personally. And I think that is where the good to know category comes in. These are big national or global events, cultural shifts, major national legislation, Supreme Court decisions, major trends, things that I want contacts on, but they don't really require my immediate attention or any type of action for me. And from there, that is when the not my business comes in. Okay. Now, this category to me is the most freeing. I have things in this category that include anything that is a part of like the daily outrage cycle on social media, internet beef, celebrity news I don't care about, any type of like fear content or constant breaking news that isn't actually breaking news, or even commentary about commentary about commentary. Like, this doesn't mean that I never see these things or that I don't ever interact with these things. It just means that I don't feel obligated to carry that information or to do anything with it. I take that kind of content with a grain of salt. Sometimes I'll indulge, sometimes will just scroll past it, but I don't ever feel like it needs to live rent free in my head. And honestly, once I made that shift, I feel like my information consumption habits change completely, because now when something shows up, the question isn't is this information important? It more so is this information my responsibility? And with that being said, another thing that I had to get really clear on for myself is that social media is not the place to get informed. Now, look, I am not pretending like social media doesn't exist. I'm not pretending like I am not on social media a lot. A lot of times, honestly, social media is the first place that something comes across my radar. So I'll see a headline, I'll see a clip, I'll see a post, a video, and then I'll take a second, I'll stop and go from there. And if something shows up in my feed or your feed, I really want to be clear that that is not proof that you are informed or that you understand the topic. To me, it's more of like a signal that something is happening. It's like the first line of defense of how you know something even popped off. And I think that the mistake that people make is treating social media like their source or their main source, but social media is literally optimized for speed, for emotion, for engagement, for reaction. There are algorithms. Social media is not focused on being accurate, and it's also not focused on giving context. So now if I see something in my feed, I don't ever take it as fact. I more so treat it like a starting point or an alarm. So I essentially will let social media tell me what people are talking about or what's going on or something that has come up. And then I will go to my trusted actual sources or news outlets to tell me what actually happened. And if it doesn't exist in those news sources, that's how I know it's really either fake news or it's not important. And when it comes to sources, you do not need hundreds of sources. I think that if you have a solid source list, so that means just one or two straight reporting sources, one source for contacts or analysis, and one long form source, I think that's a good place to start. That's it. That's all you need. And so when I want to know what actually happened, I almost always am going to start with the Associated Press. It is very neutral, it's very fact based, and a lot of local and national outlets actually rely on AP reporting. So you're getting the cleanest version of the facts before opinions or framing get layered on top. And so from there, I'll usually check other sources like Politico or the New York Times to fill in any type of gaps or get more information. And so my rule is just social media to get my attention. Straight reporting tells me what actually happened, and then I'll go to an analysis to help me understand why something matters, and then I'll use long form content to fill in the gaps when I need it to give different perspectives, things like that. Now, once you know what sources you're using, the next question is how do you know if those sources are actually trustworthy? And here is how I vet sources. I am not an expert. I feel like I've already mentioned that. I did go to school for journalism and I have been reading the news for a while. I've worked in the newsroom, and so that is my credentials. But I run every source through 5 questions. And I know that 5 questions sounds like a lot, but once you do this a few times, it becomes automatic. And then once you do it for a source, just keep a source list. So the first question is I will try to figure out what is this source trying to do? Is this source trying to inform me? Are they trying to persuade me, to entertain me, to mobilize? None of these things are bad, but I think it's important to just remember that if you confuse any of those, that is where it can be dangerous. The second question that I ask is what incentive does this source have? So, who's funding it? What audience does it serve? Does outrage benefit them? And incentives don't mean that the source is lying, but they do explain to you the framing that that source is typically coming from. The third question I like to look at is does this source distinguish facts from interpretation? If you can't tell where the facts start and end and where commentary begins in a news source, it's important to be very cautious about that source. The fourth question I like to look at is does this source correct themselves? So if a source makes a mistake or there is a correction that needs to be made, does this source actually do that, because a source that's never wrong is not honest and cannot be trusted. And the fifth question is this source boring when nothing dramatic is happening? If everything is always a crisis, you just cannot trust that source. Like, that does not mean you're informed. And I want to be very clear that I'm not saying that you need to have all neutral sources. You just need sources that are actually transparent. I think that having a bias disclosed is better than a bias actually being denied. And one tool that has been super helpful for me is the Ground News app. So it shows you how like different outlets are covering the same story and whether the coverage is leaning left, right, or center. And it's honestly not perfect, but it's a really good training tool for learning how to spot biases and framing in real time with a bunch of different news. I'll also link that app in the show notes, but I think it's a good start, especially if you are trying to figure out what sources lean a certain way versus in the center. And depending on how you want to get your information, you can decide what source works best for you. So now that you know what you're responsible for knowing, you know what sources you trust, the last piece is when and how do you actually consume your information? Because no one can stay on and regulated with 24/7 input in news. You really have to decide when you consume information, how long you're going to consume it, and how often. So for me, I usually check the news every day during the week. So on Monday through Friday. And then on Mondays, I usually do a light catch up on anything that happened over the weekend. And for some of my favorite news sources, I actually will get like their news digest delivered to my email, and I just catch up on it when I feel like it, to be honest. I used to have a really bad habit of starting my day with the news. Like, I would listen to the news while I was getting ready in the morning, and it did not take me quick to realize that the news was literally setting the tone for my entire day before I even got started with it. And especially, again, like during this administration, there is always a lot of bad or heavy or chaotic or overwhelming things that are happening. And I just don't want that to be the first thing that I process early in the morning. So now I usually check the news after work. That way, I've already handled the majority of my responsibilities. I'm not rushing, and I'm just better able to regulate how much I take in or decide what I want to hear, listen to, read, whatever for the day. And I think I already mentioned, like, I also subscribe to like a few roundup style feeds, so you can get like daily news summaries. I also subscribe to a few like daily podcasts. If I check them, I check them. If I don't stress about it. I will catch up later. And I think that alone takes so much pressure off. And I always try very intentionally not to spiral in the moment. That is very difficult to do, especially when you see big things that come out, and you're just like, what in the actual heck is going on here? So I really try to stop if I come across something and I want to understand it more deeply. I don't force myself to do it right then and there. I'll maybe save the link or bookmark the article or drop it somewhere in my Apple Notes that I can come back to later. And that way I get to choose when I engage instead of feeling like I have to process everything that's happening immediately. If you try to do that during this news cycle, you will literally go insane because it never ends. And that brings me to the last thing that I want to talk about, which is the mindset that makes all of this actually work. Because even if you have the right filters, you have all the right sources, all the right boundaries, if your mindset is off, you're still going to feel overwhelmed. And here's what I mean by that. This is a work in progress for me, but being informed is slower than you think. So, a lot of times when there is breaking news, the first reports are not complete. They are emotional, in the way that news is that news needs to be timely. So news sources are trying to get information out as quickly as they can. So when you're first hearing the reporting of something, it's usually not wrong, but it's not all the way accurate. There's a lot of understanding that comes later, a lot of details and context that come as a story develops. So when something major happens, on day one, all you need to know is that it happened. You don't really need to form an opinion yet on whatever the topic is. By day three, you can check your trusted sources for any type of updated reporting. And then once you get to like day 4 through 7, you will probably have longer analysis and the story has probably developed where you can get a full picture and actually form an opinion on the subject. But I think it's really important to remember that being informed often means waiting for information to develop. And when it comes to research and actually researching a topic and understanding it completely so that you actually can be informed, a few things. One, reading opposing explanations helps you see different perspectives. Understanding different stakeholders and the incentives that each of them have, asking questions, asking yourself, would you change your mind if certain information came about? And also just checking accurate primary sources. Don't just look at TikTok commentary. Yes, it helps add nuance and get different perspectives and adds diversity to your information, but a lot of commentary is usually opinion based, which is good. I love an opinion. I'm always going to have one, and I think it adds depth to the information, but it cannot be what you are relying on when you are trying to get the facts. And so when you're researching something, researching should make you slow down. It is slow, it is a lot more nuanced. It should create more questions and honestly not give you more certainty. Like when you're researching, it should be easy for you to go down a rabbit hole because of all of the questions that develop, because of the range of sources and information that you're getting. And so if you find yourself only reading things that confirm what you already believe, just take a step back, okay? Because that is not research, that is you reinforcing the things that you already believe. So there's really no point in reading that because you already have decided what your opinion is and you are reading things to reinforce that opinion. So there's really no point. I think that being part of being informed is being able to say, I don't know enough about this subject yet to have an opinion. That is literally the most honest thing you can do. That is not a weakness. And then also changing your mind once you get new information. Like, that is okay. That is good. That is a sign of being informed and educated and open to being educated at that. So at the end of the day, being informed is seriously, it's not that complicated. You don't need to consume more information. You just need to have better filters, better sources, and better boundaries because the goal is not to know everything. The goal is to understand the things that matter. And honestly, not being informed is literally not a flex, okay? But neither is trying to carry the entire world on your shoulders. You're allowed to be selective, you're allowed to be slower, you're allowed to say that information is not my responsibility right now. And one last thing, listening to this podcast, I said it in the last episode, I'm probably going to say it in every episode, does not mean that you're informed. This podcast is one source, it is not the source. I am going to share all of my trusted sources in the show notes, and I encourage you to use them as a starting point for building your own information practice. Also, I always have some of my favorite sources linked in my link in bio. So be sure to check those out. And if this episode helped you, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a future episode. Share it with someone who might need it. And I'm also interested if there is anything in this episode that I talked about that maybe you think I should dive a little bit deeper on, talk more in depth about, please let me know in the comments. I am happy to do that. This one is very high level. Like, I could talk about being informed, researching sources literally all day. So let me know. And with that being said, I think that covers it. So thanks for listening. I will talk to you guys in the next episode. Okay, bye.